Hi, this is Lisa Rango with Chameleon Resumes, the premier executive resume writing company, and thank you so much for joining me today. So, it's that time of year where everybody wants to update their resume, and we have been getting tons of calls this past month and getting ready for January. And I've seen the same types of mistakes over and over again that I want to bring up. So, we're going to cover today. The topic today is 6 common executive resume update mistakes that I see over and over and over again. I mean, I got a list of 6. There's probably more, to be honest, but these are the ones that I see that are most prevalent, most common, and they're fixable. So I want to make sure that you're aware of them so you can fix them when you're updating your executive resume. So let's just dive in. So the first most common mistake that I see is that you shift your language in your resume from when you last did it to when you you're currently doing it. So say you've last did your resume in 2019 or 20, you had, what I commonly see is you have achievement-based language up till 2019, and then as you're updating it to your jobs in 2020 through the present, you somehow, for some reason, shift to more of a task-based language. So your achievement-based, so you're subliminally sending a message that you don't have achievements now, and you used to, right? So you need to stay consistent in your achievement-based language throughout to present. I mean, for obvious reasons, I don't even need to tell you why. So you don't want to have task-based language. You want to always have achievement-based language. So revisit the bullets on your resume and ask yourself, how well did I do this? How do I know I did a good job? Typically when you can answer that question for the task you have listed, that answer, therein lies the root of or your actual achievement. So that's the question to ask, and that's how to remedy that. So the second common mistake in updating your resume that I see is that you have too broad of a title. You went from something specific when you last did your resume, again, say like 2, 3, 5 years ago, to now you're trying to come across really broad. And I get it. Usually the response I get to that observation that I share is, well, I don't want to limit my options. It's like, well, what happens when you are general is you are then appealing to nothing. And concurrently, you are up against other candidates that are being specific. So they're going to come across stronger in a specific way for a specific opportunity, where you're having this general approach to that specific opportunity. So you have to be specific if you want to appeal to something. And there's this weird phenomenon that I can't really quantify or give you scientific evidence why it works, but I see it work. I've seen it work for 2 decades now, since I was a recruiter, and I see it work now. When you are specific, somehow people can wrap their head around possibilities, even if they're flexing from that thing that you're being specific about, right? So if you say, I'm looking for a CFO role, somebody may in turn look at your resume, they digest it in that CFO context, and then when they may say, I don't have a CFO role, but I have this, VP of finance role. It's of a bigger company than the CFO role, maybe of a smaller company. Is this something you want to consider? And it might be something you would consider, because sometimes, honestly, titles can be somewhat fluid, even though in theory they should mean specific things. Companies over the years have inflated titles to make people feel good, and they're sometimes a lot more nebulous than they used to be. So, but when you say, senior finance executive, I mean, they have no idea what that means. They don't know what kind of finance executive you are. And sometimes people may not take the time or the steps to figure out what that really means to you and what you won't do and what you will do. So it's better to be specific. So that's the way to avoid that second mistake. The third is that your style of writing, it's a little bit similar to, it's a more broader way of saying number one, but the third mistake is that your style of writing changes throughout your resume. And you may have one style of writing from when you first did it, 10 years ago, and then you updated it 5 years ago, and those positions have another style of writing, and then your current update based on the last 2 or 3 years has another style of writing, and it looks like you've updated it every few years and never took the time to make the whole thing one presentable document. And so when you have these, disjointed writing styles in how you just continue to keep adding to the prior resume and never make it its own document in today's world, it's evident, especially to an experienced eye. So especially if you're sending it to executive recruiters, like experienced recruiters, corporate recruiters, search firm recruiters, hiring managers, they can tell when you've just been adding to it. So, and look, there's nothing really wrong with that if it's working, but if it's not working, it's time to maybe do a rehaul and have your prior experiences reframed in a way that support the job that you're going for now, right? So you may look at those experiences from 10, 15 years ago in a totally different way, and they need to be worded in a way from the experienced person perspective today versus from that inexperienced person from 15 years ago. So that's third mistake. And the way you can fix that, obviously, is just work on it as an entirety and make sure it's a uniform presentation. The fourth common mistake that I see in updating your executive resume is that you didn't go back to your profile and make sure that your resume and your profile are supporting each other, that the messages are supportive of each other, right? You want to make sure that when somebody finds you on LinkedIn and then says, hey, you're awesome, let's talk, send me your resume, when you send the resume, it is supporting the messaging that made them be inspired to reach out to you in the first place. And, you want the opposite. When you're networking and you're sending your resume, when somebody says, hey, I want to talk to you, this resume looks great, and they pop your name into LinkedIn and they pull up your profile, that is going to support the resume you just sent. So you got to make sure those two documents are concurrently or in uniform in their messaging, and that they support each other, and that the information, the dates are the same, right? Believe me, I see this all the time. Sometimes the dates are different. You might have, the position titles different on one versus the other. If you've customized a resume to such an extent where you've changed your titles, which I don't ever advise doing because technically it's lying if you're changing your titles, but you don't go back and change those titles on your profile, well, now are you the controller, or are you the director of accounting, or are you the CFO? What are you, right? So you need to make sure this stuff is all in alignment and that the messaging is supportive of each other when you go back and forth. And that's for any social media profile that's pertaining to business, right? A bio, all the things. You got to make sure that everything is uniform and supportive of the same messaging of each other. The fifth mistake that I see, and it's not applicable to everybody, but if you are doing board roles, whether they're paid board roles or unpaid board roles, I see that sometimes people have their current position and their board positions all listed in the same employment section. And so now you have these 2, 3, or 4 present roles. You're making the reader do too much work to figure out oh no, they're not working 4 jobs at the same time or 2 jobs at the same time. Okay, this is a board role. This is a regular, employment role. It's too much work. You need to separate your board roles. The mistake is that you're putting them all together. The way to fix it is to separate out your board roles from your work experience roles. People expect someone to have an employment role and then have board roles in addition. But when you group them all together, it can just subliminally look like an initial first impression that you have 2 or 3 jobs at the same time, which will make someone go, okay, they're too busy and they're not going to consider you for their role. But if you've had 1 or 2 board positions plus a regular employment leadership role, now you want a new leadership role, you will get considered because it's common at a high level, especially to have a board role or 2 in addition to a job. So you got to make sure you're catering to where the eye goes and making sure that you're having that initial first impression be the right one. And then the sixth mistake that I see is that you have included, especially for senior level people at any level, you've included everything you've ever done, and you still have on there the things you never want to do again. And if usually the question is, how can I get my resume to 2 pages, which is the recommended length for anyone over 10 years of experience? How do I get myself down to 2 pages when I have 25 years of experience? The way you start to do that is you remove what you don't want to do anymore. This is a marketing document, and you need to use the space to convey what you want to continue doing. And if you still have everything on there that you don't want to do, then you're marketing for, hey, I can do this, even though you don't want to do it anymore. So that to me is a mistake, especially if you're getting calls for jobs that you don't want to do anymore. I'm telling you, when people tell me I'm getting all these calls for jobs I don't want to do, I look at their resume and that's typically the thing that's front and center that they're getting called for. So you need to remove what you don't want to do anymore. You've earned that right, especially if you have 15, 20 plus years experience. You've earned the right to not do what you don't want to do anymore. So remove it. And again, fixable mistake, just remove it. So if this resonated with you and you feel like someone can benefit from it, I'm going to ask you to share this video. If you would like our help to have your resume done for 2023, and despite now knowing these mistakes, you don't want to do it yourself, reach out to me, DM me. You can ask me questions also via DM or lr@chameleonresumes.com, or reach out and inquire how we can work together, and maybe we can do that change and that upgrade for you. If you find that you like the video, I'm going to ask you to like it, and make sure you don't miss next week's video by subscribing to the channel. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an awesome holiday and a fabulous, safe new year, and we'll get through it together. We're going to go into 2023 together as well. So have a great one. Take care.